Ang Cebuano cinema, matagal na siyang established. That was because maraming mga producers and mga directors na gumagawa ng mga pelikula sa Cebu.
When you say Cebuano cinema, it has this connotation that any kind of cinema that uses the Cebuano language.
Anything that has a Bisaya point of view, something that na mag-synergy na, okay, that's very Cebuano, that's very Bisaya.
Bisaya also means that could be Ilonggo, Waray, Hiligaynon. Kaya lang kasi very active nun ng Cebuano films. Pag sinabi mo Bisaya, Cebuano ka din.
But when you say Visayan cinema, I believe it connotes more to the place, really. I haven't been using Visayan cinema ever. But perhaps it can be interchangeable for the layman, perhaps. And it's just acceptable over time. Cebu is part of Visayas. No? So kung yung Visayan cinema, asa dapit? Summer, Leyte, Bohol, saman.
Active yung Cebuano industry in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
How would I describe? Very prolific. Prolific in that sense because we really had that industry then.
Ang isa sa mga artistas were my father and my mother. That's why natanghal silang king and queen of the Visayan films. So very, very active noon, masaya. In fact, I remember my parents, nag-overlap yung shooting nila, naglalagari sila sa dami ng mga Visayan films na ginagawa nila dati. And mga box office yan, ha? Box office films yun. Hits talaga yun.
That's big for Cebu alone. We produce, we distribute, we exhibit. That's why you can see the remnants of our theaters in Colon.
I would have wanted to be there. Kano kayo imagine, duta siguro sa itsura at mga panahon na to.
Vision is as a structure, but they're not showing anything. Ironically, a place where there's a lot of pirated VCDs, CDs. The irony of history. To go there and see that, and then you know that it's a legitimate theater before. We have the second wave in the 70s. That was the time already that there was a lot of poaching from the capital. That was also the time that Tagalog was mandated as a national language. That would reflect in the change of cinema.
There are also problems with with politics when they increase the amusement tax.
Cinema is very capital intensive kind of career. The capital has a lot of funds, sources of funds to do that. The riskier producers are not in Cebu. So there was something happening here. Very interesting to note, but very few have survived.
So nag-start may mga 2005. Sa akong nibawaan, nag-start may mong batch na wala kabaw sa history.
Panahon nila Chanda Romero, nila Suzette. Actually, wag ko idea kasi wag yun ako siya. I mean, I didn't exist back then.
I never really got exposed to like what kind of cinema we had until I got exposed to filmmakers.
Nakahibaw na lang may once nga nag-start na lang may mga few years into it.
I didn't know that until I met Sir Nick D. Ocampo, who made a book about it.
The most important personalities nga ako ang na-meet, ironically, kay Western people. Si Misha Anisimov o si Paul Grant.
Two former professors in USC who wrote about the golden age of Cebuano cinema.
Si Paul Grant ang gitawag sa ambuton sa tunga publication nga The Detective of Cebuano Cinema.
Na-shock ko because I think more after college na ako nakibaw. More siyang nawa na pages sa history sa sa Cebu na natay film industry.
I think there should be more accessible ways to get this information.
Very limited kasi ang availability na natin, mga Cebuano films.
It's a challenge. You can only say that we lost them mostly.
Nasa set aside talaga.
Thanks to the 2017 book of Lilas that it was able to really give a very good overview.
I think 2006 or 2005 nag-start ang Cinemalaya. Mao na siya ang katong digital boom of filmmaking. Nahitabo na siya sa Manila. While nahitabo na siya, nagsugod na sad mi dinhi.
I wouldn't really call it an industry ng mga 2000s.
Struggle gito. Grabe silang sariling sikap adto.
Wala bitag yung tarong na pagka-standardize or professionalize during that time.
Back then, the only film festival we had in Cebu was like the Sinulog Film Festival. But it is kind of limiting in terms of what kind of stories you can tell. I think that's why they came up with Binisaya.
The seed of the beginnings of Binisaya Film Festival that we require films that were using Cebuano language.
Nag-start siya as a pop-up screening everywhere, from basketball courts to the beach, mga 2009, with the intention to promote my films and the films of my friends. Pag 2011, nahimo siyang film festival. So open na siya for anyone to submit their film.
During that time, the funny thing is, there's not a lot of people who knows how to do films in Cebu. There was a time ng 2011s, nagbuhat mig films back-to-back na Bisaya films. It was for Cinema One Originals. So, ang naitabo namin shortage of mga tao na naghinuwamay mi.
I didn't go to film school. Some of these production people also didn't really go to film school. Katons pataka, lagi, lingawa.
Nihit kay siya, as in maihap lang nimo ang mga tao who knows filmmaking. One big contributing factor in a way sa industry, if you call it, is the presence of Bigfoot.
That was actually a chance for the filmmakers in Cebu. Unfortunately, it didn't last.
But the thing with Bigfoot is, mas na-encourage hinuon niya ang mga taga Manila o mga international students mo study nga to kaysa mga locals.
Karon kay wala na tayo Cebuano nga feature film.
I think there was more of a drive back then.
2010s. Mao na siya ang golden age of the modern Cebuano cinema.
Current state, I'm happy because there's a lot na who are pursuing it and who are interested to do more films. Mas robust siya ngayon compared sa katong sa among panahon.
We have this organization in USC called Cinemata. We organized events, also a festival called Cine Discipolo, and it's running its 11th year this year. I do think that the effort of USC really helped preserve Cebuano cinema.
I think by far San Carlos is the best, in my opinion.
However, there are other schools that offer film-related courses.
In terms of quantity, I think okay raman. In terms of growth, medyo nakoy doubts gamay. Kay daghan na og output, pila na ka years, ang Binisaya pila na more than a decade na siya nag-exist. But I think the awareness of filmmakers na what you can do with the form of a short film or a feature film, limited paghapon kayo, dili pa kayo ang vision ba, dili pa kayo siya beyond our horizons gani.
As of now, when you look at the national output out there for the popular films, for example, you cannot see any cinema from the regions. You cannot see much. Because they also allocate for the blockbusters abroad, no? Ganyan. So, asa man tamo lugar sa atong own country. Plus, ang MMFF, i-mandate pag nagpila na ka-days, there is still a contestation in the country when it comes to Philippine cinema.
Kaagad kasi pag sinabi, Bisaya, Bisaya yan, pelikula mo, limited. Parang pinangungunahan nila na hindi ma-appreciate yan kasi Bisaya. Kailangan maalis yun sa isip ng mga entertainment, yung nasa entertainment.
Ganahan ko sa idea ng alternative siya, na kung dili siya mainstream.
Cebuano cinema needs a lot of producers who are really willing to bankroll high-risk films.
Kung naman gani mga investors gani nga mo invest sa cinema, di sila mo invest in regional cinema. Kay dili daw mo baligya. Which is the reason why nga most of the films that are coming out of the Philippines na are just diri sa Metro Manila. I mean, that's still good, but then again, hey, how many islands do we have? So that also means how many stories do we have? And how many of those stories are not being? What are we missing out on if concentrated tanan diri sa Metro?
Ang daming mga lugar sa Mindanao na Cebuano speaking.
That's also true na makasabot ng Bisaya ang Visayas Mindanao.
That means there should be a market for Cebuano films. And there was for a time. Even sa 50s, si Matranillo, Gloria Sevilla, mo na sikat na sila sa Manila because namputay lang films dito.
But there's always this mind conditioning that the proper entertainment is Tagalog.
Tagalog gid siya kay mo man ang market, mo man andan good, mo na ang expectation sa market.
Napakaning uban na, ay, Bisaya film badoy. But lately, medyo na-change siya. Maybe because, I don't know, of what we did sa Patesesos. And Vispop. I think Vispop is so popular na napopularize niya pop songs in Bisaya.
Daghan mga Bisaya nga pop music, mga hip-hop nga Bisaya.
Dami kaya mga lakas kumita na very popular talents who are mga Visayas.
Yeah, I think they're much more updated and much more relevant sa pop culture. I guess there's a lot of cultural contribution to it to popularize na ma-embrace yung pagka-Bisaya na notion na di lang ang stigma na proper entertainment has to be Tagalog.
I think na nausab na siguro gamay ang ato ang perception and expectation of what is cinema supposed to be.
There is a Cebuano Cinema Development Council in Cebu City. I have not heard of what they've done so far. Where is the development?
I don't think the LGU understands how to help the creative communities of Cebu.
On the last Cebu Chamber of Commerce that I also attended, in which Cebu is trying to contribute a huge chunk of the GDP from the creative industry in Cebu.
This Cebu Film Commission that's been established, it's a resolution that has been passed sa City of Cebu.
Film cannot only live by itself. We need to also learn how to utilize our partnerships with different sectors.
There are some decision makers in Cebu who touch on our subject matter, which is film, na I feel whatever ang ilang ginabuhat is not something na, na I think more beneficial.
And what makes it sad is once the creative communities sort of achieve something, kind of one of the first to congratulations, here's a certificate, whatever. Where were you when we needed you, man? Come on!
And then, every year you have these politicians who go on stage and say na, we will revive Cebuano cinema. Yatay, nakabuhat ako Cebuano film na nationwide, ha? Like, kung sa to, wala to. Medyo sakit lang siya na, daga na may, in a way, contribution. Pero, we kept getting forgotten or erased.
Ang sad manggod sa Cebu manggod, like for example, people like me, or sila ni Keith, we'd love to stay in Cebu. If I didn't have to move out, I wouldn't.
Kung naa lang sa Cebu, din ako mo mag-Manila. Pero naadiri ang kuan eh. Naadiri ang mga decision makers eh.
When your artists are forced into a sort of diaspora to the capital, that affects what happens in your hometown. Mo fluctuate yun siya.
Right now, I am under the mentorship of Keith Deleguero. Just last year, I interned for Binisaya and he gave this opportunity na mugo ko sa Cinemalaya. I also learned a lot from the film scene in Manila, which is very, very alive. Bringing back those lessons here in Cebu, I felt like there are a lot of work to do. And Binisaya is just one of the avenues that can help really elevate the film scene here.
I've noticed na sariling sikap yun ang creative community sa Cebu.
Mao na siya ang Netflix for us. Na din si Carl Lara. Kung nag-agi ka sa Binisaya, alumni ka, pwede ka i-program din eh. Kung nag-Binisaya ka, yan kay films nga older that was not in Binisaya, pwede sa na siya i-screen din eh.
The filmmakers who were very active in the 2000s and 2010s, they're already coming together to kind of start figuring things out. So I'm like, kalingaw, muna na siyang nag-evolve na ang mga Pokemon.
Many things have to come together for it to really bloom.
Mag-expertise building ka, mag-audience development pa ka, you have to make sure the right infrastructures are there. You have to get the local government to support you, LGU, come through.
I would have liked to see activities that will be yearly, annually, like there's a certain workshop here, there's a certain con there. No? Annual yun siya, way undang ba? Pockets of cultural activities related to film should be institutionalized on that. Those are the steps that I'd like to see. Di man big kayo, so man di. Nindot anak, kada pista na hingan, oh good.
Kinahanan siya hand in hand ba? Government and the community working together.
I hope there's for example, FDCP would go to Cebu and do sort of workshops and mga trainings, or let's say, build a cinematic sa Cebu. I mean, daghan na kayo nag-wonder, nagduda na, ano may cinematic sa Cebu? I think problem pagyapon ang amusement tax, which is very big.
30, as kayo. The rest of the Philippines, hindi man 30. Ngano na siya, sir, ma'am. Di ba? Kana nga part, si LGU may maka-ease, ba? To allow the community to flourish.
But yeah, I guess ma-expose lang siguro na these things exist, Cebuano films exist, and I think that's what the Binisaya Film Festival is doing.
If Binisaya had better funding, then there would be more students or young filmmakers who would be excited to make their own stuff because yes, samit ko sa Binisaya.
Naghimo mi karon og gani nga mo ang program ng Archipelago with Gil Osorio to hopefully share whatever we learned from the international scene, ma-apply locally and to bring our local scene to the global whatever. Kay mo nagtaon-taon na ta, nga naghimo-himo, nagtuyok ra diri ato ang mga salida ba. Mas nindot pod nga makahibaw ang tibuok kalibutan nga nag-exista.
You cannot compare one era to now. That era has passed. That boat has sailed. We have another harbor here. We have another journey. Katong mga sauna nga nung naing ato to. Na maka-learn ta nga nung naing ato to, and then naing mga ginagmay na to ma-apply siguro karon. We are standing on the shoulders of giants.
Ang dream nako kay self-distribution. Wala na yung middleman. Direct to the audience. But lisod na siya buhaton no, kitako kay ang competition karon. So mao na siya ang challenge sa mga bag-ong filmmakers.
Ang end game nako is I want it to be a film destination that, you know, international people can go there and wow, we have an easy access to all the facilities and the locations. You can make it like a tourist / filming destination ang Cebu because it has the city, it has the beach, it has the forest all in one. So entice them to go to Cebu to shoot, and that could also help in terms of, you know, industrializing Cebuano film industry.
I hope to see the day nga magsugod kapurma bitaw ng industry dito po sa Cebu balik. It's actually income generating. We have graduates from San Carlos Cinema, for example. Nga dili mag-worry kung asa sila papadong afterwards. They don't have to come here to Manila.
And medyo mas standardize ang practice na di ka maghuwat na shit when ang next grant dapat di yung tainganan.
They don't have to leave their home, and they can tell stories from direct from Cebu. Ganahan ko masuya sa mga young ones ba nga kanang wala ni sa akong panahon pero yes, go. Di ba? I wanna get that feeling ba?
What I mentioned earlier about the Cebu Film Commission, they're still establishing it. They're still creating it. They're still forming it. Hindi ko pa alam kung anong extent ng support ang magagawa nila for the film industry. But I really hope that it will push the filmmakers to do more Cebuano films.
Kinahanglan kita government support yun, I think, sa akong opinion. Kung wala sila, magsigiri kita build from the ground. Nenitabo, it's awesome, Cebu, Lupad, Manila, bye-bye. Wala na po. Which was the case for the music scene also sa una. Like, sa Bandab. Lani, buta kayo na sa Bandab, may Franco, sige ko sunod-sunod na sila sa una, bisagasan na sila mag-gig. And then they moved to Manila because like, wala may support, wala may avenue. And then Vispop came along. Kanang Vispop, sariling sikap po na sa sa community. Mas gasto mo nga bisyo ang film. So it needs more money.
The strong presence of Cebuano filmmakers like Kit Deligero, Victor Villanueva, our current talent, Chai Funash here. I really do think nga there is a really bright future for us.
We have so much talent in Cebu. Kaya kailangan talaga natin i-push. We have to lobby it.
It's our responsibility to always hold that as our torch. Ready siya mapawong again, just like after the 1970s na situation nga na disappear ang Cebuano cinema.
If it happened in the 50s to 60s, it happened again in the mid-70s. It can happen again. Cebuano aesthetics might be more defined later on.
I'd like to see a Cebuano film nominated internationally. That's where I want the Cebuano films to go.
I think the move for our performer, Chai Fonasier, to be in an international film, that's significant. For Keith to be part of the talents in Berlinale, significant. To be in Sundance is significant. Those are baby steps that actually took years of making. The future, always bright. Cinema is not dead. Cebuano cinema is not dead. It can innovate, it can be better, much better.